Senator Brown, you have been in elected office since 1975, 2007. You've been in the Senate. Your supporters say you are experienced. You have power because you have seniority. You know Ohio and Ohioans. Your detractors say, well, he's just a lifelong politician. He's overstayed his welcome. What do you say to voters when you ask them to give you 6 more years? Well,
I get things done. When I talk to the business community and to community groups, I like to say, you know, when I came to the Senate, I wanted Ohio to get its fair share, and now I want Ohio to get more than its fair share. But I can point, I'm proud of what I've done. I've spent my career standing up to special interest groups, standing up to Wall Street, standing up to the drug companies. Look what we did. We capped prescription drug prices at $35 per month. We just announced that there will be, that we are negotiating, the government's going to, the way the VA does, negotiate drug prices directly with the drug companies for 10 drugs. Those numbers will keep going up, where we've dropped the price 50, 60, 70%. We passed the PACT Act, named after an Ohioan, which means already 40,000 Ohio veterans have gotten care at the Chalmers Wiley in Columbus or at Wade Park in Cleveland, VA. We saved the pension of 100,000 union workers. So I can point to a number of things. And, you know, my opponent says he's not going to work with the other party. He said, I'm only work with people that I agree with or that agree with me, and he won't get things done. I've reached across the aisle, gotten things done, and will continue to.
There's been a lot of talk about Donald Trump sort of reshaping the political map in the United States, particularly trying to woo unions in the labor vote. The head of the Teamsters spoke at the RNC. As someone who's spent a lot of time in union halls, made your campaign about the dignity of work, what do you think about Republicans' efforts to win over labor voters?
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what Republicans are doing in their political campaigns. My job is to fight for workers. My job, first of all, is to put Ohioans first. So I've taken on presidents of both parties on a whole host of issues. We'll continue to. My job is to fight for pensions. I'm not just the pension for those 100,000 union families in Ohio already, but what we're doing, the Social Security Fairness Act. We've got 40-some Democratic sponsors, 15 Republican sponsors. It will mean that people, if they've earned their pensions, will get their entire pensions. It's my job to look out for people, partisanship aside, and that's what I'll continue to do.
You know, Ohioans last year overwhelmingly approved reproductive right protections. It was clear the way that vote was going. It's important still to women in this state. But even people who prefer to go back to Roe v. Wade think that maybe it's too far to have late-term abortions when there are no problems with either the fetus or the health of the mother. Is there any circumstance under which you would approve a restriction on abortion?
My view is that I want women and their families, when they choose, and their physicians making these decisions, period. I don't want politicians making them. And this is another contrast. You know, in politics, I don't see it. You've known me a long time. I've known Joe for less time, but you know I've always looked out. It's really not so ideological. It is who's on your side. And when it comes to women's reproductive rights, I want those decisions made by women and their physicians, period, not politicians. And that means that women should make those decisions, and I don't judge any more than that. And I think that, frankly, when my opponent looks at what happened, I assume he knows what happened last year. He spent $100,000 to try to defeat issue 1. Personal money. I mean, he's got a lot of money. He can do things like that. But he spent money to defeat issue 1 to go back to a total abortion ban in Ohio. And now he's arguing for a national abortion ban, no exceptions. Says he's 100% pro-life in the face of what Ohioans decided with 57%. That to me that's not representative government. When the voters say they want something resoundingly, it's really arrogant to say, no, I know better than you, I want a national abortion ban. So that's one of the contrasts we will make.
J.D. Vance has said that Donald Trump would veto a national abortion ban. Do you believe him?
I don't pay attention to what J.D. Vance says about Donald Trump and abortion bans. I know that Ohioans don't trust politicians. Men and women don't trust politicians to make these decisions on abortion. And it's clear when you look at what's happened in the last 10 years, who's sitting on the court, how they violated precedent, how they made these decisions to take away that constitutional right. that I don't think voters are going to trust them, Bernie Marino and his friends, on the issue of women's rights.
Talking about President Biden, you eventually called for him to drop out of the race. You said you were listening to Ohio voters and what they had to say. What was it that you heard that eventually swayed you to call on the president?
I think I heard Ohioans say that we need to move on. I heard Ohioans say in large numbers. I was one of only 4 Democratic senators that said that it's time for him to move on, and I think it was the right decision. It made me sad because I like him personally. I think he's done a lot of things that the prescription drug issue or the infrastructure bill, a number of things that were good for this state, but I thought it was time to move on, and I think it was the right decision.
You chose to skip the Democratic convention. It ended up being a raucous success for your party. A lot of enthusiasm came out of those 4 days in Chicago. Kamala Harris now in places no one thought she would be because of the polling for her is looking much better than expected. So you chose to stay at home. What you said you wanted to, be in Ohio. What did you do those 4 days? Did you think you made the right decision?
Yeah, I made that decision 4 months ago that I was not going to go to the Democratic convention. I'm in a tough race in a tough state, and I was talking to voters. And I'll give you 3 real quick examples. I was in Niles, Ohio, north of Youngstown, with a bunch of people whose pensions we saved, Teamsters, iron workers, confectionery workers. 2 people came up to me afterwards and said I saved their lives because their pension, they didn't lose half their pension that they had negotiated in collective bargaining and depended on. One day I was in Toledo with 2 sheriffs, one Democrat, one Republican. Both have endorsed me, one Lucas County, one Wood County, to talk about fentanyl, which is about to make a huge success in keeping this stuff out of the country by focusing on the Chinese Communist Party's precursor chemical manufacturing and the Mexican cartels fentanyl manufacturing that's smuggled into this country. That is so important. When you talk about the border, you've got to talk about fentanyl and how important that is. And then maybe to cap the week, I was in Piketon, which is 3 counties south. It's just between Chillicothe and Portsmouth. The citizens of Pike County essentially helped us win the Cold War. A lot of kids and adults were poisoned by nuclear radiation because of the nuclear enrichment plant there, which was there for our weapons to win the Cold War. Some died from that. They had to knock down their junior high school because too many kids were getting sick. I got $20 million from the federal government to build a new school. We did the groundbreaking. I was surrounded by maybe 100 fifth graders, and then the local marching band in a very small school district in Piketon. It was fun. It was celebratory. Most of the officials, pretty much all the officials in that county are Republicans, and we were all singing off the same page. And I already knew their party affiliation. I didn't ask their party affiliation when I went to Congress and said, we owe that to this community because they helped us win the Cold War, period.
Kamala
Harris. That was way more fun than going to Chicago. It was also more useful than going to Chicago.
Kamala Harris, if she makes it to the White House, obviously you will be working with her administration. If she does not make it, you will be, instead of being in concert with the administration, you'll be in conflict with the administration. How important is it to you that she wins?
Well, I've endorsed her. I think it's important that she win. One of the things I like about what she's done is she's talked about the dignity of work and looks at the world in that way. And that means you fight for pensions. It means you fight for higher wages. My opponent in this race is opposed not just to raising the minimum wage. I think we should raise it. It had been raised in years. He actually wants to eliminate the minimum wage. So I think but if President Harris, if she's elected and she does things that I think aren't good for Ohio, I'll take her on. I've done that with steel jobs and trade enforcement with this president. I've done it with trade with Barack Obama and with George Bush. I've disagreed with presidents on a whole host of issues and will always put Ohio first, regardless of who he or who she is.
What's your relationship like with Kamala Harris? You served in the Senate with her. I believe she came to campaign for you in 2018. Just on a personal level, what's your relationship
like? I like her. We've worked together. When somebody's vice president, you don't have as many contacts with them as when they're a fellow senator. We never sat on the same committee, so we didn't have that relationship, but we worked together on a number of things.
On immigration, You backed the bipartisan border bill that did not make it through. There was a lot of criticism of Donald Trump for allegedly torpedoing that bill and making sure that lawmakers didn't do it because it politically did not look good for him. But it was 3 years into the Biden administration before you reached that bill. Didn't it look like it was political and not policy? Didn't it look like it was an 11th hour attempt to make it appear that something had been done about the border bill?
Well, no, it wasn't an 11th hour attempt. I understand it can look that way from here because a number of Republicans work with a number of Democrats. It wasn't a Democratic idea. It was immigration's complicated. Immigration, unfortunately, politicians would like to benefit from politically from immigration and the controversy and the problems. I mean, I would say presidents of both parties have failed on immigration. I would put it on Biden, I'd put it on Trump, I'd put it on Obama, I'd put it on Bush, and maybe back before that. We should have passed something a long time ago, but when we were close about a decade ago, it got blown up because, again, some people wanted to make it a political issue because it's so difficult. I mean, no whining here, it's difficult. A lot of things are difficult in people's lives. We still need to do it, and I'm committed. I was committed on that bill. I'm committed, whoever's the next president, that we bring it back and do it and fix it. But I also don't separate it, as I said earlier, Colleen. I don't separate it from fentanyl. And my focus has been much about fentanyl because I wrote the bill with Tim Scott, the senior Republican on my banking housing committee that I chair, and we passed a bill. We had sitting at the committee table as we led into this bill. We had the national head of the Fraternal Order of Police, and we had Jelly Roll. And the two of them bonded because they both seen the ugly side of fentanyl addiction, including deaths of people that they've known. And so this is really serious business. We go after fentanyl, we secure the border, we deport people who are here illegally if they committed crimes. We need to do this right.
You know, you talked about all those people it goes back to. They're putting it on you. Bernie Marino and the Republicans are running a lot of ads that say you're responsible for allowing illegal criminals to come across the border and make waves and problems here in Ohio. So how do you respond to those criticisms?
Well, if I respond to every ad when I'm watching a Guardians game, sorry, this is Columbus and he's Cleveland, but if I'm watching a Guardians game and I see another nasty ad with chaos at the border and a very, I'm not thinking of the word, Alfred Hitchcock-like voice. Some of your listeners remember Alfred Hitchcock, right? The younger ones may not, but if I hear that ominous voice, I just don't answer all that stuff, and they make stuff up. And again, it's whose side are you on? Who's fighting, because I'm working bipartisanly, who's fighting against fentanyl, keeping fentanyl out of the country? Who's fought for more police at the border? Who has worked with the bill we introduced, the bipartisan bill was supported by the Border Patrol agents? Who's the Republican sheriff in Wood County has endorsed me because he knows I want to do the right thing on immigration. So you're going to see ads, you're going to see lies. In fact, my understanding is Mitch McConnell's the Republican leader of the Senate's about to spend more money against me, special interest money, than any Senate race in history this fall. And they spend money against me because I stand up to the drug companies and stand up to Wall Street and stand up to the oil industry, stand up now to the railroads because of the damage they did with little contriteness, if that's contrition, I guess is the right word, with what's happened in East Palestine, and they'll continue to unless we crack down on them.
One of the things you talk about the attacks, Bernie Marino, he's called you a few times the old commie. What do you think about that? I
don't even understand that.
Like alleging you're a communist.
That's a word I haven't heard in a while. I've been called a lot of things in my career. Commie, maybe I was, I don't know if I've ever been called that. I think the voters want to see somebody who gets stuff done. And they also, I fight for the dignity of work, you know that. It's not just a slogan to me, it's pensions, it's health care, it's minimum wage, it's wages, it's protections in the workplace. Bernie's been sued a number of times, had to pay back, for his own employees, had to pay back $400,000 in back wages that he stole from his employees in overtime, and then he destroyed the documents that the judge demanded. So I will make that comparison anyway. Who's fought for this state? Who fights for the dignity of work? And when I say workers, I mean whether you punch a clock or swipe a badge, whether you work for tips, whether you work in an office, whether you're taking orders at McDonald's, whether you're mid-level management, whatever, and I'll always do that. And Bernie doesn't have quite so good a record.
As we let you go, we know that 2 visions were laid out for the country at the 2 national political conventions. Donald Trump talked about a country in crisis. He said it's on decline, that it needs to be rescued. There was a lot of joyful predictions of prosperity that came out of the Democrat convention. They're calling it Kamala mania right now. What is your vision, your personal vision of where the country stands now and the best path forward?
Well, I love this country, and I don't understand people that want to denigrate it. We're still the beacon of hope around the world. We're still the major superpower. I was just this week at the Ukrainian festival in Parma. Greater Cleveland has the 3rd largest, next to New York and Chicago, Ukrainian population in the country. And I think about a number of politicians have become pro-Russia. And if Russia overruns Ukraine, comes right up to the Polish border, the Lithuanian border, the Slovak, then NATO's involved. And I don't want that to happen. So I'm not going to go around denigrating the United States. I'm not going to go around saying this is an awful time for our country. My vision is what I will do is continue to stand up to interest groups so that the American middle class grows. To me, when you believe in collective bargaining, you believe in pensions, you believe in unions, you fight for the middle class, and that will. I mean, my wife's dad carried a union card for 35 years. She almost died when she had when she was 16, and she had an asthma attack, and her dad's union card and his health care allowed her to go to the Cleveland Clinic for two weeks or over a period of 2 years and saved her life. So I want every American to have that opportunity.
If I could, one last question here. So much has been made about age in this presidential election. You're 72 years old. At the end of this term,
I'm actually 71. Nice try.
You're 71 years old.
So just emphasizing my age.
Well, at the end of a 6-year term, should you win, you'd be roughly the same age as Donald Trump. Have you given much thought about how long you want to do this, how much more you want to go?
Thinking I want to do it for 6 more years, and that's what I'm asking the voters for. And I feel as good waking up. I wake up every day and I think, I still get to do this and make this fight for Ohio and make this fight for workers. And as long as God willing and the voters willing, come November, I will keep doing it.
Senator, we know you didn't have to come in here and do this, so we appreciate it. And
I feel like I did when you asked Colleen. Joe, a little less so, but you've been okay.
But we thank you for taking time. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.